Throughout the Blue Lock story, we have seen characters grow along the way, going from average high school football players to now getting to play on the same field as some of the best players in the world. And while we have seen the continuous growth of the Blue Lock players, and the majority of them just get better, there has occasionally been moments when a character in the manga has had what could be described as a downfall. So since it's been a minute since I've done a ranking video, I thought it'd be interesting to rank the top 5 downfalls that have occurred so far. So if you enjoy the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I just hit 1K, so if you want to help me keep growing, then any support is appreciated. Now, it can be argued that none of the Blue Lock characters, at least the most relevant ones, have completely fallen off. So when I say downfall, this is more of a character having some type of regression in the story. So this isn't just in terms of skill, but also characters that I feel like experience a downfall in other aspects, such as their character development or how relevant they became to the story and more. Also, this is as of chapter 243. So I imagine most of these characters on this list will have a comeback, but as of right now, where they started and where they are currently in the story could be classified as a downfall. So let's get started with our 5th place spot. And in this spot, I have Ness. I put Ness on this list since initially when Ness was introduced, he was hyped up as the heart of the Bastard team in the barcha match, which it would be surprising to a lot of readers now reading that line, since at first it seemed like Ness was going to be an important piece in the Bastard team, but besides a few moments here and there, Ness hasn't had much of an impact in the actual matches, especially as they progress, with Ubers being the latest example of Ness not having much of an influence on the match, with his character even basically saying this exact same thing in the match. Plus, Ness's biggest trait is that he's the right-hand man to Kaiser and helps him score, but Kaiser's most impressive goal that we have seen so far in the manga didn't even involve Ness, so his one role of helping Kaiser seems even less important now. But we are getting his backstory, so Ness might finally play a really important role in the PXG match. But right now, I do think that Ness has had a downfall, since when ranking him in comparison to the other Blue Lock players, at first when Ness was introduced, a lot of people would have had Ness pretty high, since as a midfielder for a pro team, and even being called the core of that team, there were high expectations that Ness was going to do big things. But now Ness has fell victim to not having many feats to back up his position and this claim. And now people feel comfortable putting Ness towards the bottom of a list when ranking him in comparison to the Blue Lock players. So I would definitely say that's a downfall for his character and skill level, since Ness also went from being a character that many people were intrigued by to now being one of the most disliked characters in the series. Alright, next in the 4th place spot, we have Kunigami. Now, Kunigami's comeback is probably coming very soon with the PXG match coming up, but as of right now, Kunigami could be classified as having a downfall, since in the beginning of the story, he was one of the main characters of Blue Lock, one of the strongest players on his team, and was well liked and well respected by readers. But those days seem long gone now, since after his return from Wildcard, people had really high expectations for Kunigami for how he would perform, since his body could be compared to the number 1 striker in Blue Lock currently. But for many people, Kunigami has just not met those expectations. He does have 2 goals in the NEL, but most people aren't impressed by them since they felt like cheap scores and didn't have a lot of impact. Since this is just my opinion, but even Yukimiya's final score for PXG felt like it had more of an impact. And in the Ubers match, Kunigami was basically a ghost in the match, so the allegations about him being a fraud has definitely gotten worse. And currently in the story, he is far from the well-respected and well-liked player that we met in the first selection. Since not only has Kunigami's skills disappointed people, but with a major shift in his personality, people feel like this has been a major regression in his character development. Since when we first met Kunigami, he was one of the most interesting characters, since his motivation of wanting to be a football hero for the next generation made him stand out. But now that he's back, he barely talks, only insults people, and cares about working out. Of course, this can be explained that Kunigami is still dealing with what he went through in Wildcard, but when we get so many chapters of the same thing with his character, and currently nothing at all, you can't help but feel like he has had a major downfall. PXG very well could be the last chance that readers give Kunigami, so let's hope that he makes one of the greatest comebacks and proves that he is an integral part to the story. Since the Egoist 4 is feeling a lot like the Egoist 3 right now, since Bachira and Chigiri, while they aren't on the Bastard team, they feel like they have made more of a bigger impact recently than Kunigami has. So in the third place spot, I actually originally didn't have this person on the list, since someone else who I'll mention in the honorable mentions was on the list. But as of the most recent chapters, it felt like this person needed to be on the list, since he is going through it right now, which is Kaiser. So Kaiser is a weird situation, since in the beginning of the arc, many people were impressed with his character, and he became a fan favorite character, having good performances in both Barcha and Manshine. But in the most recent match of Ubers, while Kaiser did have one of the most impressive goals we have seen in Blue Lock, he did get locked down for the majority of the match by Lorenzo and got outscored by Isagi. And while at first this wasn't going to be enough for me to say that Kaiser was experiencing a downfall, the most recent chapters kind of changed my mind, since Kaiser is acting like a man who is experiencing a downfall and a fall from grace. First, Rin scoring a hat trick against Manshine, even when Kaiser couldn't do that, made people start to question his skill level. And obviously, there's many different factors contributing to this. Different teams, different support systems, since while Ness hasn't been doing much for Kaiser in the most recent matches, he truly is the one player that Kaiser can count on, while Rin most likely has the support of the whole PXG team, except possibly for Shidou. Since we still don't know if he did truly single-handedly destroy Manshine, or if he had a bit more support than we got to see. But anyways, what finally made me put Kaiser on this list was his reaction to after losing to Isagi, since he is truly acting like a man who is experiencing a downfall, and he is far from the confident and cocky player that we met at the beginning of this arc. And he seems to be fulfilling Isagi's prophecy of making Kaiser into a naked king. Since when I saw him vomiting and choking in the latest chapter, I said he needs to be on this list, because that is someone who is experiencing a downfall right now. Kaiser's comeback is most likely happening very soon as well, but until then, he holds the third place spot. And this next character that I put in the second place spot might not be someone who people initially think has experienced a downfall, since it's not as obvious as the other characters on this list, but for a while I felt like this character has been experiencing a silent downfall, and I wanted to talk about it, which is Itoya. We met Itoya back in the third selection, and he was considered one of the top 6 strongest players in the facility at that time. Plus, having a cool ability and design, many people were intrigued by his character. But I have always been confused by Itoya's treatment in the Barcha match, since we know that Barcha got done dirty in this arc, being the worst team in the NEL, only having 2 relevant Blue Lock facility characters on their team, barely getting any screen time, and for a while their legacy was the team that Baru scored a hat trick on. But at least for Bachira, he's the face of Barcha, he's had major growth, and is consistently one of the top ranked players in the NEL values. Meanwhile, Itoya got crumbs in this arc, and I would understand if he was on a team that had a lot of relevant characters like Bastard or PXG, but Barcha is literally just him and Bachira. So it's very confusing why the author would give him such little development, even with the excuse of this being the first and shortest match, since there were only 2 characters on the team that needed to get any focus, not counting Lavinio. Yet, It was pretty much just about Bachira's development, then we moved on. It almost seems that throughout this arc, the author has wanted to cut a few characters that were relevant to the story, but no longer are, just so he could focus on certain characters, and Otoya seems to be one of those characters that has got the cut. I mean, at some point, I even had a theory that Otoya wasn't going to make it into the top 23. And I don't think that's true anymore, and I wasn't able to find any evidence to back this up, but I felt like the only explanation for Otoya's treatment was that he was no longer going to be a part of the story. And while I do think he is going to stick around and make it onto the team, the days of Otoya starting and being relevant could very well be over. So as of right now, this feels like a downfall to me, so he takes the second place spot. Before we get to our first place spot, I just wanted to quickly say some honorable mentions. First, we have the person that I originally had on this list, which was Ryo. As my second favorite character, I was excited about the journey that Ryo was going on, wanting to become his own independent player. It felt like he was rapidly growing as a player and having a major character development moment, which was exciting to see. Since while I do like Ryo and Nagi as a duo, I do think their dynamic wasn't healthy and that they needed to become more independent, which it seems like Ryo was finally accomplishing that, only for the manshine match to immediately take back all of his character development and have Ryo go back to where he was in the first selection in terms of a lot of his character development. It seems like him and Nagi are getting punished for this from the latest chapters, but I really do hope that Ryo is not just always going to be Nagi's sidekick and will get to go back to that mindset of wanting to be an independent person. But since this is a regression in his character development, I have him as an honorable mention, but if you wanted to put him on the list as of right now, I would understand that. And another quick honorable mention is Ryu, since he kind of got the Otoya treatment during the Ubers match, being the least utilized person on his team and not getting a real memorable moment from this match. I mean, besides Baru, none of the other Uber players really did, but at least for Nico and Aiku, they got metavision and Sendo was able to save a goal against Hiyori, while the only moment for Ryu that I could think of off the top of my head is having the same panel as the King block or whatever that was called, and since as a defender, it definitely should have been his moment. But I don't think it's as bad as Otoya, since Ryu is almost at the top 10 in terms of ranking. Plus, there were a lot of characters in that match. And the last quick honorable mention would be Shidou, since as someone who was once considered the second strongest player in the facility, he is far from getting that treatment right now. But until we get confirmation about what is going on with his character, I decided to keep him off the list. Alright, and in the top spot, I don't think this is a surprise, especially since I probably used his face in the thumbnail, but I don't know yet. We have Nagi. While characters below this list have more of what you could call a subjective downfall, Nagi's downfall is definitely the clearest example we have seen of a decline for a character in the Blue Lock story. Since we have seen characters not have great moments, but they are usually able to bounce back typically by the end of the match. While Nagi got completely destroyed in PXG and did not have a bounce back. Obviously, Nagi is definitely the character from this list that is guaranteed to have a comeback. With a movie next year and being one of the author's favorite characters, Nagi is likely going to be one of the strongest players by the end of the series. But as of right now, the author is making Nagi's downfall clear, and as I've said in previous videos, Nagi will likely have to hit rock bottom before he can go up. So the only question is now whether he has already hit rock bottom and he will make a major comeback during his match against Ubers, which has Baru on the team, or if he's going to lose again. But either way, Nagi's going to take the first place spot on this list as experiencing the biggest downfall we have seen in Blue Lock. Since Nagi went from being the scariest player on the field to struggling to keep up with his peers. Well, that's the end of my video. Please let me know your rankings down below in the comments, and if you think I forgot any characters. Each character has had low moments, but currently these characters are the ones that I think haven't bounced back yet from their low moments, so they are on a downfall. But on a more positive note, this is my first video since hitting 1K, and I just wanted to officially say thank you on video to you guys for all the support you guys have been showing me for these past few months. I'm still wrapping my head around 1,000 plus people being subscribed to this channel, so it just means a lot, and I'm really thankful. If you don't want to miss any of my future videos, then push that post notification button so you don't miss any of them. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!